Disclaimer. This video contains discussions of real-life crimes, including violence and death. The content is presented for documentary, educational, and informational purposes. Viewer discretion is advised. All information in this video is based on publicly available records, investigative reports, and court proceedings. This story is told with the intention of examining the events surrounding the case while honoring the memory of the victim. The goal is not to sensationalize tragedy, but to understand the circumstances and psychology behind the crime. The woman who shaved her head to commit the perfect murder. It was the text message that turned a tragedy into a homicide investigation. At 8:47 p.m. on a Tuesday in Beckley, West Virginia, Nicole Bradley sent this message to her closest friend. By midnight, her husband Michael was dead. The death certificate would read, "Natural causes." The funeral would be closed casket. And for 11 weeks, Nicole would wear the black veil of a grieving widow. One who had supposedly been fighting her own terminal battle with ovarian cancer. But Nicole wasn't dying. She was killing, and she had shaved her head, forged medical records, and manipulated an entire community not just for sympathy, but to create the perfect smokescreen for murder. To understand how someone weaponizes their own mortality, we have to start with the life Nicole Bradley had built. Or rather, the house of cards she was desperately trying to keep standing. Nicole wasn't just any wife. She was a pharmacist, a trusted medical professional with access to drugs, knowledge of dosages, and an intimate understanding of how the human body fails. To her neighbors in the suburban enclave of Beaver, she and Michael were the golden couple, high school sweethearts who had built what looked like a pharmaceutical empire. But beneath the Instagram filters, the Bradley empire was a Ponzi scheme. Nicole had been siphoning millions from investors, friends, family, even the church congregation. Michael, an accountant, had discovered the discrepancy 3 weeks before his death. He confronted her on a Sunday evening. That confrontation should have been the end of Nicole's fraud. Instead, it became the catalyst for homicide, because Nicole didn't just need to silence Michael. She needed to silence him in a way that would never trigger an autopsy. She needed him to die, expectedly. The timing was almost too perfect. 3 days after Michael discovered the financial fraud, Nicole received her diagnosis. Stage 4 ovarian cancer, 6 months to live, terminal. Except there was no oncologist. There were no scans. The diagnosis existed only in Nicole's performance. This is where psychology bleeds into evil. Nicole didn't just tell people she was dying. She became the dying woman. She shaved her head, not with the patchy randomness of true chemo hair loss, but with the precise buzz of someone preparing for the role. She applied topical creams to induce rashes that looked like radiation burns. She lost 30 pounds through starvation, not disease, creating the hollow-cheeked, sunken-eye look of the terminally ill. This isn't just lying. This is Munchausen syndrome taken to its most predatory extreme, a psychiatric condition where sufferers feign illness for attention. But Nicole added a lethal twist. She wasn't faking cancer to get sympathy for herself. She was faking cancer to lower the guard of her victim. Michael, racked with guilt over confronting a dying woman, backed off the financial investigation. He began caring for her, bringing her medication, adjusting his life insurance policies. He had no idea that the support group Nicole had joined was actually research. She wasn't learning how to cope with death. She was learning how to administer it. Why insulin? For a pharmacist, it's the perfect weapon. In a non-diabetic, an overdose doesn't cause immediate death. It causes hypoglycemia, a catastrophic drop in blood sugar that mimics a heart attack, a stroke, or in an older victim, simple organ failure. The victim slips into a coma. The brain swells. And if the body isn't tested within hours, the insulin metabolizes completely, leaving no trace. Nicole began her treatment by asking neighbors for insulin. She claimed it was for her own off-label cancer protocol. A lie so medical-sounding it silenced questions. But she was stockpiling. She knew exactly how many units would kill a 200-pound man. She knew Michael's weight to the decimal. She had calculated the degradation rate of his tissues. This wasn't a crime of passion. This was a chemical assassination planned with the precision of a laboratory experiment. February 5th, 2019. the night of the murder. Michael had been feeling off for days, fatigued, confused, sweating profusely. Nicole had been nursing him with specially prepared protein shakes. She told him he was probably fighting the flu, or perhaps grief was manifesting physically. She was so attentive, so loving. The devoted wife caring for her husband, while she herself was supposedly dying. At 9:30 p.m., she administered the final dose. Not in the shake. Too unpredictable. This was direct. An injection into his thigh while he slept, delivered with the expertise of someone who had given thousands of flu shots. The needle was small. The entry mark would look like an insect bite. By 10:45, Michael was in a hypoglycemic coma. His breathing became shallow. His skin turned clammy. Nicole didn't call 911 immediately. She waited. She sent the text to her friend about saying goodbye. She created a digital alibi of a woman preparing for widowhood. By the time EMS arrived, Michael's brain was dead. By the time the coroner examined him, the insulin had vanished from his bloodstream, metabolized into naturally occurring compounds. The death certificate read, "Natural causes, probable cardiac event." The perfect murder. At the funeral, Nicole gave a performance that chills investigators to this day. She spoke about how Michael had held her hand through her diagnosis, how he had been her rock, even as she was leaving this earth. She cried at the casket. She accepted hugs from people who didn't realize they were hugging a killer. She had successfully inverted reality. She was the dying woman who had outlived her healthy husband. The statistical improbability was buried under an avalanche of sympathy. But here's where the Munchausen pathology betrayed her. Most killers lay low. Nicole couldn't. The attention she had received as the brave cancer patient was a drug more powerful than the insulin she had used. 11 weeks after Michael's death, she was miraculously in remission. The hair grew back. She claimed it was an experimental treatment. The weight returned. She began investing again. She had forgotten the first rule of the perfect murder. When you're lucky enough to get away with it, you stay away. She got greedy, and she got caught. It wasn't the murder that brought Nicole down. It was the math. Michael's death had triggered an audit of their finances, standard procedure for sudden deaths involving business partners. That's when investigators discovered the Ponzi scheme, the missing millions, the forged signatures. But detectives are trained to follow the money, and sometimes they find a body along the way. The break came from a neighbor. They remembered Nicole asking for insulin for her cancer months before Michael died. They remembered the protein shakes. They remembered that Nicole, a pharmacist, had been the one to suggest no autopsy, claiming Michael wouldn't want to be cut open. When they exhumed Michael, advanced toxicology found traces in his hair follicles and vitreous humor, the gel in the eyes, that indicated massive insulin overdose. The levels were astronomical, the kind of levels that don't occur naturally, the kind that only come from a needle in the hands of a professional. In December 2023, Nicole Bradley was convicted of first-degree murder, but the trial revealed the true horror. She had killed Michael not just to hide the fraud, but because the fraud and the cancer illusion were intertwined. She needed to be the tragic heroine, the woman who fought cancer while grieving her husband. The Munchausen syndrome had evolved into something predatory. She had weaponized empathy itself. Prosecutors called it malignant Munchausen, a rare psychiatric profile where the sufferer transitions from harming themselves for attention to harming others to maintain the illusion. She shaved her head not because she wanted to look sick, but because she wanted to look harmless. She weaponized her supposed mortality to mask her actual monstrosity. The judge gave her life without parole. Not for the Ponzi scheme, not for the lies, but for understanding that some deceptions are so calculated, so cold, that they constitute evil in its purest form. Nicole Bradley is currently incarcerated. Her medical license was revoked. Her hair has grown back completely. She is, in every physical way, the picture of health. But the woman who shaved her head to commit the perfect murder will die in prison, remembered not as a victim of cancer, but as a cancer on the human soul. If you found this story disturbing, fascinating, or thought-provoking, Make sure to subscribe to Archive Truth for more real stories hidden beneath the surface of everyday life.